On this channel, we try to focus on things which are interesting, still relevant, and in some way help you understand Italy today. The story of Enrico Mattei and the creation of Italy's giant energy company Eni ticks all the boxes, and best of all, it's also a classic whodunit murder story. Enrico Mattei had been a fascist party member in the 1930s, but fought in the resistance, and had been given the task after the Second World War of breaking up Agip, Mussolini's company to look for and develop Italy's energy resources. Instead, Mattei reorganised it, making it a part of a new company, Eni. He complained about the terms being offered to Italy by the established oil companies and said that Eni would develop Italy's natural gas resources, holding out the prospects of self-sufficiency and wealth. He founded a national newspaper, Il Giorno, which is still going today to promote his approach. He funded favourable politicians and appealed to nationalist emotions with his story of the hungry little cat who tried to eat from the dog's bowl but was tossed aside, saying that Italy was like that unfortunate cat. Sadly, Italy's natural resources were insignificant, and Eni came to challenge the big oil companies, which Mattei famously characterised as the Seven Sisters. He challenged them by offering North African and Middle Eastern states a much higher royalty for their oil and gas reserves, and reached out to the communist Soviet Union, visiting Moscow. He was largely successful, and Eni pulled off deals in Algeria, Iran, Sudan, Egypt, and the Soviet Union. In short, he represented both a threat to the established oil companies as well as to American political interests with his cozying up to the Soviets. But he was also a threat to French interests, as Eni was rumoured to be sympathetic to Algerian nationalists seeking independence from France. Italian politicians also knew that their futures partly depended on his support, and there was talk of Eni being the, quote, state within the state, a term used typically to describe the mafia. This is from Time magazine in 1961 and shows the impact that Mattei and Eni was having. Don't forget, these were the years of the post-war Italian economic boom, of plucky little Italy fighting back, taking risks, being prepared to challenge the established powers and punching above its weight. What could possibly go wrong? Well, in October 1962, Enrico Mattei was in Sicily and flew in the Eni French-built private jet from Catania to Milan's Linate airport. In bad weather conditions, as the plane put its landing gear down on its approach, it fell from the sky. Mattei, an American journalist, and the pilot were all killed in what the authorities initially classified as an accident. However, things are not always what they seem, especially in this period in Italy, and eyewitnesses changed their stories. The audio of a recording of an interview mysteriously disappeared. The plane's flight instruments were dissolved in acid, definitely not best practice, and rumours started to circulate that Enrico Mattei's paranoia may have been justified after all, and the crash had been caused by a bomb which was detonated when the landing gear was lowered. In fact, award-winning film director Francesco Rosi made a film about it called The Mattei Affair. He engaged local journalist Mauro Di Mauro to investigate Mattei's final hours in Sicily, and he compounded the mystery by disappearing in 1970, shortly after telling people he'd discovered the story of a lifetime. So who were the suspects in this real-life whodunit? It could have been the Seven Sisters oil companies, eager to remove a threat to their profits, or Italian politicians who feared Mattei was becoming too powerful. The French secret services or French colonialists would have welcomed the removal of someone who may have been encouraging Algerian nationalists. The CIA probably feared Eni was too close to Soviet Russia, and Mattei's fellow Eni director and successor, Eugenio Cefis, had recently cooled towards him. And of course the plane had flown with Mattei from Catania in Sicily. The supergrass Tommaso Buscetta said the mafia had planted the bomb. Or perhaps it was simply an accident after all. We will probably never know for sure. Enquiries were reopened many years later and the bodies were exhumed, with traces of explosives apparently being found, and the official verdict changed to homicide by persons unknown. The story of Enrico Mattei is still relevant today. It was one of the first of many mysteries which were to dog the country for the next 30 years, through the violent years of lead of the 1970s, mafia involvement in Italian politics, the shooting down of a passenger jet over Ustica, and the political upheavals of Tangentopoli. Links to my videos on all these topics are in the description below. But it's also a positive story of Italian imagination and entrepreneurial skill. Eni remains a huge energy company for a country so lacking in oil and gas, and Mattei was a pioneer of the use of natural gas, which had largely been unknown at the time in Western Europe. Not for nothing is the gas pipeline between Algeria and Italy today called the Enrico Mattei gas pipeline.